Venezuela's government announced it would resort to the Hague-based International Court of Justice to solve the territorial dispute with Guyana over the Essequibo region. China called on Russia and Ukraine to exercise restraint to avoid an escalation following the explosions of two missiles in Poland. And in Sudan, military and opposition representatives reached a preliminary agreement on the country's transitional period. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the headquarters of teleSUR in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced that his administration would resort to the Hague-based International Court of Justice to solve the territorial dispute with Guyana over the Essequibo region. The Venezuelan head of state added that the executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez traveled to the Netherlands to participate in the court hearings to defend the country's historical and legal right over the territory of President Rodriguez has insisted over time that the Geneva Agreement of 1966 is the only legal instrument in force to achieve a solution. The Venezuelan government has expressed on several occasions its total willingness to reach an amicable agreement with Guyana, while stressing the importance of a practical and acceptable settlement for the parties.
The Vice President is traveling to The Hague right now because she is going to defend Venezuela's right, its historical and legal right over the Essequibo, and she went there to represent Venezuela. Stay tuned.
In Peru, nearly 1,000 artisanal fishermen and merchants affected by the Repsol oil spill are demanding the extension of the list the government is using to grant economic compensations. The protesters are also asking the Spanish company Repsol to comply with the economic obligations that affect more than 2,000 families because of the oil spill. The citizens are requesting the technical reports that will allow them to know the real number of people affected and thus be able to negotiate a fair compensation with a transnational company. This happens a little more than a year after the oil spill occurred on the coast of Peru, due to which the Spanish company hasn't been yet duly sanctioned. This Wednesday, the Chilean Ministry of Health informed about the first death related to monkeypox. The agency specified that the patient was an adult male who had been diagnosed on September 29th. According to specialists, the patient suffered from an underlying pathology that complicated the disease. The Pan American Health Organization reports 51 deaths due to monkeypox, 31 of which correspond to the Latin American region. 12 in Brazil, 4 in Mexico, 2 in Ecuador, 1 in Cuba, and 1 in Chile. The World Health Organization has recorded at least 79,000 contagions worldwide and therefore declared a health alert last June. The Mexican government rejected the immigration control actions announced by Texas under the pretext of defending the common border against an alleged migrant invasion. In a statement, the Mexican Foreign Ministry pointed out that only the federal government could issue the application of migratory laws, border control, and the negotiation of international agreements. Therefore, only the federal governments of both countries can hold dialogues on these matters. The governor of Texas announced that the Department of Public Safety agents would be able to arrest and deport illegal migrants at the border. However, the Foreign Ministry remarked its tireless work on a more orderly, safe, and humane migration. The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, announced that on Sunday, November 27th, he will lead a march in support of his 40 years in office. The President stated that the reason for the mobilization is to celebrate his 4th anniversary in power and the official presentation of his annual government report. The President acknowledged that the march will serve as a political thermometer in order to determine whether the population agrees or disagrees with his administration. The original date for the presentation of the report was scheduled for December 1st, but the decision was made to bring forward the presentation so that the activity would coincide with the mobilization. The government of Jamaica declared this week a state of public emergency to combat rising violence in several police divisions and parishes on the island. The provision was decreed by the authorities through 2 separate orders. The first covers the parishes of Clarendon and St. Catherine, as well as the police divisions of the capital Kingston and St. Catherine. while the second covers the districts of St. James, Westmoreland, and Hanover. The Prime Minister Andrew Holness decided to recommend to the Governor General Patrick Allen the declaration of a state of emergency after an extensive study and with the advice of those responsible for public safety.
We have been saying this over and over again. The level of crime in our country is over and above the capacity of our regular law enforcement. It is not a situation that is unique to Jamaica. Many island states have not looked at national security in the sophisticated way that they needed to over the last 30 years to make the investments in intelligence gathering, communications, transportation, border control, investment in the training of our security forces, and in the training of the officers of the security forces. Now we are doing that, but it takes time to build the capacity.
Let us take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In China, government authorities have called the parties to exercise restraint to avoid an escalation following the explosion of two missiles in Poland. At present, Ukraine and Russia have exchanged accusations regarding the accountability for these events. China reiterates its unwavering position in favor of promoting a dialogue that may lead to peaceful and prompt resolution of this conflict to stop its serious humanitarian implications. Several personalities have disregarded Moscow's alleged responsibility, saying there is evidence Ukrainian air defense fired the missiles. On Wednesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry called for calm and restraint from the parties after a missile attack on Polish village near the Ukrainian border.
Note or relevant reports. Given present circumstances, all concerned parties should remain calm and exercise restraint to avoid an escalation of the conflict. China's position on the Ukrainian issue has been consistent and clear. The most pressing task at the hand is to keep the dialogue open for a peaceful resolution to this conflict.
Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Igor Konachenkov denied hitting the Ukrainian capital on Tuesday and said all strikes reached their intended targets.
I would like to emphasize that in the course of the massive high-precision attack on November 15th on facilities in Ukraine, not a single missile strike was carried out on facilities in the city of Kiev. All the destruction shown by the Kiev regime in residential areas of the Ukrainian capital is a direct consequence of the fall and self-destruction of anti-aircraft missiles fired by Ukrainian troops from Ukrainian and foreign anti-aircraft defense systems deployed in the city.
In Poland, President Andrzej Duda publicly ruled out that the missile which caused two deaths in his territory came from Russia. The Polish president expressed that it is probable that the missile was launched by Ukraine, and added that it is not necessary to invoke the fourth article of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which foresees consultation mechanisms in case of aggression to one of its members. Diplomatic sources confirmed that the executive has been in contact with NATO to communicate this situation. The military organization expressed through its leader, Jens Stoltenberg, that there are no indications of a deliberate attack on Poland. At a press conference in Brussels, the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance Director General Jens Stoltenberg said there is no indication that a missile which struck a Polish village near the Ukrainian border was the result of a deliberate attack from Russia, after Kiev accused Moscow of being behind the explosion.
The incident is ongoing, and we need to await its outcome. But we have no indication that this was the result of a deliberate attack. And we have no indication that Russia is preparing offensive military actions against NATO.
In Indonesia, the G20 summit comes to an end with a joint declaration in favor of the peaceful resolution of conflicts and the protection of macroeconomic stability. The heads of state participating in the summit, which took place in the city of Bali, issued a joint declaration in which they set out the key points that were addressed during the event. Among them, the importance of implementing mechanisms that allow for the peaceful resolution of conflicts. The representatives also pledged to jointly address the global food crisis, especially in developing countries, so that they can respond to global challenges. They also agreed to work to protect macroeconomic and financial stability. During his stay in Indonesia, Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez met with the head of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, and they agreed to discuss in December about the surcharges paid by indebted countries to improve their financial situation. During the meeting, Fernandez pointed out that the conflict in Ukraine has cost his country some $5 billion due to the increase in energy prices. The head of the IMF expressed her enthusiasm with the meeting and stressed the importance of Argentina's progress in reducing inflation. Argentinian authorities also reached a $5 billion financial exchange agreement with China after Fernandez met with President Xi Jinping on Tuesday. And we have more news coming up after a farm short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Sudan, military and opposition representatives reached a preliminary agreement on the transitional period in the country. According to Yasir Arman, spokesman for the largest opposition movement in Sudan, a framework contract was agreed with the government of the country. He also specified that in spite of the agreements on the transition period, 4 clauses of the contract are still to be defined. The talks began in June in Khartoum and were accompanied by international delegations. After several disagreements, a breakthrough in the talks and new direct negotiations between the military and the country's opposition were announced in November. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, more than 230,000 people fled their homes following conflicts between armed insurgent groups and state security forces. The International Organization for Migration said attacks against communities have been taking place almost daily since the end of October, resulting in high levels of violence forcing inhabitants to flee their homes. In addition, the IOM reported that there are more than 110,000 people trapped in the midst of the conflict, suffering constant torture, forced recruitment, and looting, among other types of abuses. Iran on Wednesday rejected a draft resolution by Western nations calling on it to cooperate fully with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iranian diplomats said that the United States, Britain, France, and Germany had submitted the resolution to the United Nations Nuclear Agency. Meanwhile, Iran's atomic energy chief, Mohammad Islami, said these countries brought documents which they themselves know are not true, and which are rejected by the Islamic Republic. The resolution calling on Iran to cooperate fully with the International Atomic Energy Agency came after a report by the agency concluded that there had been no progress in a long-standing probe into undeclared nuclear material in Iran. 4 days before the opening game of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, fans from across the world gather in Doha, Qatar, while security preparations are underway at some stadiums. The week-long countdown to the World Cup began on Monday as the world's leading footballers focused their attention on one of the most controversial tournaments in history. The first World Cup to be held in the Arab world will kick off on Sunday when the host nation faces Ecuador. Holding football showpiece event in a desert state has required an unprecedented reorganization of the international calendar, shifting the World Cup from its normal slot in the Northern Hemisphere summer to avoid the Gulf's scorching sun.
We arrived this morning at midnight. We are among the first Mexicans to arrive here in Doha. We came to cheer on the Mexican national team and we hope to get beyond the 5th match. We have come to cheer them on without fear of success. We arrived earlier today, around 2 o'clock in the morning, a large group of us from Córdoba. We have come to watch the games and we hope that on the 18th we will all be here in blue and white, celebrating the victory in the World Cup.
On Wednesday, Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva launched the country back into the battle to curb warming, and leaders reaffirmed key pledges. Lula kicked off a lay of events on Wednesday with a call to host the 2025 climate talks in the Amazon region. In his first international trip since defeating outgoing far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, who presided over years of rampant Amazon deforestation. Lula also announced the creation of a Ministry of Indigenous People to protect the vast region's vulnerable communities. Under Bolsonaro, an ally of agribusiness, average annual deforestation increased 75% compared with the previous decade.
You can rest assured that we will talk with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and ask that the 2025 COP be held in Brazil. And in Brazil, it has to be in the Amazon. There are 2 states in the Amazon region that are able to host such an event, the state of Amazonas and the state of Pará.
Speaking before attendees at the United Nations Climate Change Conference COP27 in Egypt, Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said while humanity has spent trillions of dollars in wars, there are still 900 million people around the world that have nothing to eat.
Billions of dollars in wars that only bring destruction and death, while 900 million people around the world have nothing to eat. And we experience a moment where we have growing tensions and multiple crises, the risk of a nuclear war, geopolitical tensions, crisis of food supply, in energy too, and erosion of biodiversity, intolerable increase of inequality. These are hard times, but it was always in difficult times and crises that humanity found the force to confront and overcome the challenges.
The Pantanal wetland in Brazil is an extraordinary ecosystem of global importance. Still, hundreds of thousands of people who directly depend on it and the unique wildlife it is home to face devastating threats like fires and droughts.
Pantanal is actually suffering from a serious problem right now. The drought has been raging here for 3 years, so we are now at risk. As the temperature rises, the temperature in the Pantanal has reached 36 or 38 degrees Celsius. So that's causing a lot of trouble and starting fires in some places. The impact of the fire was huge, devastating to both the fauna and the flora. The tree on the left of where we are is affected, and the fire has spread across the road.
We have a disclaimer to announce. Our Facebook page was hacked and is currently displaying content out of our agenda and against our social, moral, political, and informative premises. We stress that teleSUR English is not responsible for these posts that violate Facebook's community standards. We invite our viewers to join us on our new Facebook page at teleSUR English Official to stay up to date on current world events. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.